Tarkir Dragonstorm is here. We have all the cards spoiled. We're going to be reviewing these today in a limited context for your upcoming pre-release, all your sealed events, and your drafts. What do these cards look like? Are they going to be good? Which ones to avoid? Which ones to seek after? Which ones are first pickable? Going to be diving into all these today. So we'll be reviewing these from an A through F scale. So A's, think about these as your bombs, right? Cards that are just, they're game winners. Bs, these are cards that you are very happy to draft, cards that you would easily pick one, that are just really good, phenomenal cards in your deck. C is very playable. Your deck is going to have a lot of Cs. Any draft will. You are always going to have commons and uncommons that are totally playable. They're replacement level, right? So one isn't necessarily that much better than the other. And then Ds are cards that typically you're not going to want in your deck. You might have your 23rd, your 22nd card be, but you're going to be trying to avoid these. And then Fs, as you can imagine, are just unplayables. Avoid these like the plague. So we're going to go over the mechanics today, and then we'll go into each color for the commons and uncommons. While Tarkir is a 3-color set, a really good way to think about them is actually that it's a 2-color set. And that's your base deck is 2 colors, and they're going to be the enemy colors. Because for every enemy color pair, you're then going to be able to go into one of 2 clans. So for example, white-black, right, they're enemy colors. That means if you start off your draft as white-black, you have the option of going into Abzan if you pick green as your 3rd color, or you could go Mardu if you're picking red as your 3rd color. So we'll be considering these, we'll be going in that order. So let's start with the mechanics, starting first with the Abzan mechanic of Endure. So for the Endure is when something enters battlefield or the Endure effect happens, it goes on the stack. You have the option of adding X +1/+1 counters or creating an XX spirit token. So if it endures 1, you get 1 +1/+1 counter that can go somewhere, or you can get a spirit token. One thing to note with this mechanic, the way it works, is that let's say this example on the screen, Fortress Kingguard enters the battlefield, this creature endures 1. In response, if someone shocks this and kills it with the trigger on the stack, when the trigger resolves is when you decide what you're going to be doing. So that means if they kill this on the stack, you can still get your 1/1. Notable rule there. And then, so that is the Abzan mechanic. The Mardu mechanic is Mobilize, which is when a creature attacks. So you'll get that number of 1/1 tokens. So in this case, Mobilize 1. When this creature attacks, create a tapped and attacking 1/1 red warrior creature token. Sacrifice it at the beginning of the next end step. So both of these notably have the option to make tokens, both of these mechanics, and that's something that you will see throughout Tarkir, Dragonstorm Tarkir, is that when you look at the enemy color pairs, right, that the clans that have the same enemy color pair in common, those mechanics are going to favor one another, which is really nice when you're thinking about drafting, is that there's going to be, it's not like you pick a card and it's like, okay, this is a white card, but it can only go in my Mardu deck. It's not necessarily that case. They're going to lean towards Mardu, but there'll be functionality in Abzan and vice versa. So let's dive into one other mechanic that we will see. This is Omen, and there is a cycle of enemy-colored storm broods where the spell and the creature are enemy colors. So we'll be covering those as well in our gold color section, which is where we're going to start. We're going to start with the gold cards, and then go through each color there. So this example, an Omen is much like an adventure that we've seen before in Eldraine, but instead of when the spell resolves, it goes to the adventure zone later, allowing you to cast the creature. That's not how this works. Instead, you shuffle the creature back into your library. So you are getting one or the other. These are split cards. They're not 2-for-1s automatically. So not quite the same functionality as we're used to seeing cards that look like this. So keep that in mind. So this example here, Purging Stormbrood, is a 1 black and 4, so black and 4 for a creature, 4/4 flying, ward, pay 2 life. That's nice. When this creature enters, remove all counters from up to 1 target creature. That's great. And notice it's all counters, not all +1/+1 counters. Something you would definitely see in Tarkir is that the evergreen mechanics, flying, trample, lifelink, those types of things. There's going to be a lot of creatures and effects that create counters, those types of counters. So this is nice. 5 mana for a 4/4 with some evasion, ward, pay 2 life, and then being able to shrink one, an opposing creature or make it, weaker. That's solid to me. That seems very much C plus territory, I would think. And then the spell side is Absorb Essence, white and 1. Instant Omen. Target creature gets +2/+2 and gains lifelink and hexproof until end of turn. Okay, so a solid combat trick. Being able to get both lifelink and hexproof, I think, is really important. One thing I'll note, especially because we're going to talk about Mobilize here in a second, is I've been reviewing all these cards. There's a little part of me that is terrified that these Mardu, just white-black Mobilize decks are going to be insane. When you get those tapped 1/1 attackers, there's going to be a lot of things they synergize with, and they're going to nickel and dime you for points of damage here and there, and it makes combat really difficult, makes blocking difficult. You put down a blocker, they can still attack into it, you trade off, and you still take some damage. Maybe they get some value with that token or something. So there's part of me that's like, oh no, this is going to be a 3-color set with a ton of mana fixing and tap lands. Like, what are we just going to get run over by aggro decks? So anytime I see lifelink or gaining life, I'm going to put I'm really valuing that. And there's a good amount of lifelink throughout the set, which I think is intentional to allow us the time necessary to develop these 3-color decks and not just get run over by aggro decks here. So I'd say this controlled this. All right, we'll go through the cards a little faster here, but just kind of wanted to give the lay of the land as to what the set is going to look like and feel like for my first overall impression. So this Absorb Essence instant, I would say, I don't know. I mean, it's a combat trick, but the fact that it gives hexproof is really nice, so it can just protect a creature outside of combat. That's always good. It is 2 mana, so I'm going to say this is realistically probably a C. I mean, it does a lot for 2 mana. 2/2, lifelink, and hexproof. If it ever resolves, it's going to do what you want it to do. But again, holding up 2 mana can be a little difficult. So we'll see how it plays out. But what's so nice about this is I don't think I would necessarily... I mean, I would put Absorb Essence in my deck, in an average draft deck, but I wouldn't want a bunch of these. Whereas I'd be happy having 2 copies of these in the deck because the creature side seems great. Again, I think this is probably like a C+ creature, a little above your average card is my guess. And then have the option of having an instant until then is great. It can bridge the gap, right, of having this early. And then one thing that's notable is if you draw this again, you can cast either side of it when you cast it again. So eventually, in a longer game, if it does turn out to be a slower format, as I'm personally hoping for, and thinking it actually lends itself to be with all the tap lands and the 3-color decks, you cast 2 or 3 omens, and you start to fill your decks up with more spells, right? Because you're shuffling these back in, so a little bit higher spell density. I don't think that's on average going to make a huge difference, but it's something to note there. So let's get into the gold signposts for white-black. So here we have Hardened Tactician, 1 white-black for a human warrior, 2/4, and it has the ability to pay 1 generic, sacrifice a token, draw a card. Okay, so this card looks phenomenal. I think this looks like to be a very strong, as you hope that the gold signpost cards, you hope that these are common, or that these are strong. Right away for 3 mana for 2/4, good stats. I mean, nothing too crazy. The 4 toughness is going to help you out on defense. Again, I'm going to put a premium on being able to have some extra defense in the early game. So turn 3, putting a 2/4 on the battlefield, fine stats, but to sacrifice a token and draw a card, again, that can be done instant speed. You can do it as many times as you want as a turn, so you can do it, again, when you're attacking with a mobilized creature. You can just sacrifice the token that they block, right? Because they might just say, let's say something attacks with mobilized 2, and they block 1 creature, or they block 1 token. You sacrifice that token before damage happens. Then they take the 1 damage from the other one, you pay another 1, you sacrifice the 2nd token, and you just drew a 2nd card. So I think this looks really, really good. Obviously, it lends itself a little bit more towards towards Mobilize, because those tokens get sacrificed and they're always 1/1, whereas sacrificing your 2/2 or like your 3/3 of an Endure, you're not necessarily going to want to turn that in for a random card. That being said, you can do it just if that creature is going to die anyway, which is nice. So this card looks like a strong B. I think this card looks very good. Marshal of the Lost, 2 white black orc warrior 3/3. So understated there. 4 mana for a 3/3. Death touch. Whenever you attack, target, and notice it's when you attack, not when this creature attacks, so you do get the effect right away. Target creature gets +X/+X until end of turn, where X is the number of attacking creatures. And note that you can stack this with mobilize so that your tokens are on the battlefield attacking when this resolves, making X larger. But it does need a target, so you cannot target one of those tokens in order for this mechanic to go on the stack. So a couple of rule item there on this card. Rules item. This card looks great. I think that it doesn't necessarily strike me as, oh my gosh, as strong as the previous card, but just because of the stats of 3/3 for 4. But I mean, even just attacking with 2 creatures, like you're getting +2. I'm saying this out loud, actually. You're getting +2/+2. Like, how are they supposed to block that? That seems really good. And again, a lot of these creatures, they make their own attacking buddy. So even just a simple card that has not endure. What's the other one? Mobilize 1. Now that creature, if you have a 3/3 that's attacking, now it's a 5/5 right away. Maybe this is good. Maybe this is actually pretty good. I'm going to put this in B- territory, but I could see this being pretty good in the right deck. It doesn't need much. Like, obviously, if you're huge swing out, you're attacking with 5 creatures. Like, yeah, you just gave something +5/+5. That's obviously phenomenal. But even just like, and 1 creature attacking, sure, like your 2/2 now trades with their 3/3. That's good. But because of mobilize, you only need 1 extra creature for this thing to give +2/+2, and it's going to do it again on the next turn. Which I guess makes this thing really good on offense. So, it's a small body, right? So it's a little bit more subject to removal. And for 4 mana, you're going to be losing on that mana exchange almost assuredly. But it obviously is great on defense because it has Death Touch. It'll trade with anything. But on offense, it can pump itself, right? It can target itself. So I can see why it's only a 3/3. I'll see B-. All right, moving into the Abzan now. So if we white black, we go into green for Abzan. This creature doesn't fit the theme at all. There's nothing to do with +1/+1 counters or going wide, but it's awesome. I mean, this is the card we've all been waiting for. A Siege Rhino reprint, a baby Rhino. So you're losing one of everything. So white, black, green, Rhino, 3/4 trample. When it ETBs, each opponent loses 2 life and you gain 2 life. This is great. I mean, I don't think it's as strong as a Siege Rhino because I think Siege, adding 1 more mana and 1 more life drain and 1 more power and 1 more toughness is overall better, especially because you're more likely to have your mana set up properly by turn 4 versus turn 3, which is definitely something to consider. You don't get that all 3 colors just on demand. These aren't standard decks with extremely powerful and consistent mana bases. But on turn 3, this is obviously great body, good effect. Trample's always nice, especially in Abzan with +1/+1 counters. Like, again, I guess that is something where this kind of combos because it has trample. So we're stretching the word combo there a little bit, but being able to make this thing a little bit bigger and trample over for some extra damage is good. I'm going to say this card is, I'm just going to say C+, just because I don't know how great this card is on turn 4 or turn 5. It's not bad. Like, you're not going to be sad to top deck this. But Drain 3 is not Drain 2, right? Or Drain 2 is not Drain 3. So it's not like where you top deck a Siege Rhino and you're like, oh man, this is just flipping the game in my or in my direction. But I mean, I'm such a Siege Rhino lover. I'm going to give it a B-. Kintree Severance. So here we have hybrid mana. We're going to see plenty of cards like this that are cost like this. So the casting cost is 2 or a white, 2 or a black, or 2 or a green. Any combination. So this could cost you 3 mana if you have perfect Abzan mana. It could cost you 6 if you're running this in your red deck or your blue deck or whatever. So this is most likely going to be cast for 3 or 4. And note that you even could just put this straight up in your Mardu deck. Like, you don't even need green to consider this card. So consider that always. I'm going to say that on average, you're going to be casting these for 3.5 mana. So we'll see what this looks like. What does it do? It's an instant. Exile target permanent with mana value 3 or greater. Awesome. Okay, so yeah, it can't target the small stuff. That's fine. You're spending 3 or 4 mana. You don't want to spend your 3 or 4 mana to target something small anyway, ideally. So 3 mana to exile a large anything, and it's a permanent too. I just actually realized that. Okay, this is great. So it's super flexible. It can answer anything. That's 3 or bigger, and anything smaller than that, you'll find other ways to answer that. You're not too worried about that. So Planeswalkers, always nice to have main deck Planeswalker answers, and this is great. I'd be happy to pay through 4 mana for this effect. In most like you just think about your average. Typically, we think about our removals as costing 2 mana to remove small things, 1 or 2 mana, depending on the set. 3 mana is when you start to get good removal that can, be consistent murder or effects like that. Then usually it's a jump to 5 mana is typically what we see, right? Is the secondary tier 2 removal suites that we see at common in limited. So the fact that I'm looking at this for 4 mana, I kind of looked at like that as a 1 mana discount from what you typically see from the less powerful, less strong. And 4 mana is a solid place to be. And then 3 mana is obviously great. Happy to play this. I think this is going to be, I'll say C+, but depending on your mana, then it could be bumped up to a B. Reputable Merchant, again, same mana, so 2 or white, 2 or black, 2 or green, human citizen, 2/2. When this creature enters or dies, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. Okay, so just as Abzan as can be. I feel like it's nice that you get one on the way in and on the way out. It can target itself, so on the face value, it's just a tough, difficult to cast. 3/3, a little bit better because there's going to be some synergies with +1/+1 counters and things like that. So not too great. The fact that when you die, you eventually get something else is good too, especially if you could trade this with something. If you're just chump blocking, like that is obviously not, feels like a bad exchange. This doesn't strike me as super strong. I'm going to say C-, but maybe it synergizes and ends up being better. But overall, I think with the tough casting cost and the not underwhelming stats, the fact that you don't get both +1/+1 counters right away, you have to wait till something dies later. And what if you don't even have another target? Then you don't even get a value. Like this is the only thing. It's just a 3/3. You're top decking. You just 3/3. You trade with their 3/3, and you don't even get the value. So I'm gonna say C-. I'm not gonna be thrilled to put this card in my deck, but it'll certainly make your deck some amount of the time. All right, Armament Dragon, 3 white, black, green dragon, 3/4, flying. When it enters, distribute 3 +1/+1 counters among 1, 2, or 3 target creatures you control. Okay, so the floor of this is that you get a 6 mana, 6/7 flying. That's pretty good. That's pretty beefy. That catches my interest. Or you could put your counters in other places. You could put it on your Skirmish Rhino. Suddenly your Skirmish Rhino is a 6/7 trampler. I mean, that's beefy too. Or distribute them however you want. So this looks very strong to me. It's a 4/6 mana. You're getting a lot of power and toughness. You're getting a flying body, and then you have a lot of flexibility with how you distribute those counters and where you put the power and toughness. So I'm going to put this in the solid. I mean, we'll see what 6 drops all look like. Again, this could be a very powerful set. It's all context dependent. But my instinct is to say this is strong. This looks like C+, B- territory. I'll say B-. I'm giving a lot of those right now. These gold cards are making me excited. I'm also just thinking of the dream where you just can cast these no problem, no problems with your mana, perfect mana base every time. So, but at 6 drops, once you get to 6 drops, like yeah, you're gonna be playing this on time. Hopefully, you'll have your mana set up by your 6th turn. All right, moving on to the Mardu cards. For the other white black cards, we have Defibrillating Current, 2 red, 2 white, 2 black, 2 or the hybrid mana there. So it's a sorcery, deals 4 damage to target creature or planeswalker, and you gain 2 life. Excellent. Awesome. Again, looking at this for 4 mana, being able to do 4 damage for 4 mana, at sorcery speed, not insane, not amazing, but then you gain a little bit of life, so that's okay, or so that makes it better. At 3 mana, obviously fantastic. And again, this is something where it's not like you have to, this isn't like Skirmish Rhino where you really want to be casting this on turn 3. Like this is a removal spell. You can cast this whenever. So you can easily take time, set up your mana. This is good in the later game, turn 5, turn 6, whenever you can double spell. When you have your mana set up correctly, you have all 3 things set up. So I'm going to say this is a C+. I think this is pretty good. Being able to kill a lot of things. Also 4 toughness. There are a lot of creatures with 4 toughness. A lot of the dragons have 4 toughness, so that is notable that this is going to be killing a lot of the big flyers that they spent 5 or 6 mana on. So I'll say C plus. Reigning Victor, again, we get the 2 or a red, 2 or a white, 2 or a black. Orc Warrior 3/3, mobilize 1. Again, so that means when this creature attacks, you'll get a tapped and attacking 1/1 red warrior creature token. Sacrifice it at the beginning of the next end step. When this creature enters, target creature gets +1/+0 and gains indestructible until end of turn. Okay, so it definitely enables a strong attack the turn it comes into the battlefield. Right? You get the extra piece of toughness, and then or the extra piece of power and indestructible. So that's good. That's a good ETB effect. And then 3 mana for a 3/3 mobilize 1 seems good. Again, I think especially this is interesting because Abzan, a deck that's slower, it's all about having big toughness and big beefy creatures. That's what the tribe's all about. You're fine having taking turns 1 and turns 2 at some point to play a tap land. Maybe even turn 3 you play a tap land, turn 2 too. Like that's totally fine. But Mardu, while I see these cards as being really strong, I do feel that the mana is going to be sketchy. Like it's going to be difficult to be casting your stuff on turn 3 all the time because you're going to want tap lands are just such a higher cost in these types of decks. Like you don't want your Mardu to have 4 or 5 tap lands in it, whereas you're thrilled to have 4 or 5, 6 tap lands in one of your other in several of the other clans. So this overall I'm gonna say is maybe C plus territory. I don't know. This one's difficult to evaluate in a vacuum, but and it enables a free attack with an extra point of power, and you're not going to worry about that creature dying, which is great. And then on itself, a 3/3 with mobilize 1 does seem good. So because of the ETB, I'll say this is a C plus, which makes me feel like this thing had to get buffed because again, like you look at this card and you think, how was this card made? That second ability seems so random. It seems so not having to do with the same flavor or theme. It seemed like they wanted to give some type of an effect the turn it entered because most likely you're not casting this on turn 3. You're probably going to be casting this on turn 4 for 4 mana. Maybe on turn 4 for 3 mana, and then you have an extra mana to maybe do something with. But I look at this and I see as a 4-drop, I'm actually pretty underwhelmed. So I'm going to bump this down to a C. Looking at this theme about casting it for a 4-drop. Okay, Bone Cairn Butcher, 1 red, white, black, demon, 4/4. Again, I told you that 4/4 is that 4 toughness is really common. We're going to see a lot of 4 mana 4/4s, 5 mana 4/4 flying dragons. Mobilize 2. Now we're talking. And attacking tokens you control have death touch. Okay, now this is an exciting 4-drop. Forget that other card. This is what we're talking about. Like right away, again, you're gonna get some benefit the turn it enters because it affects whatever tokens you have, whatever other mobilize you have on your 2 and your 3 drops that are attacking. So all you're giving those death touch just means they can't block it. You're getting free points of damage in, because that's the thing about these these 1/1s is unless there's tricks or something involved, like they're just gonna a lot of times they'll just block the 1/1, which it won't matter too much. But they can really stack up if you can get multiples going, which this card right away by itself gives multiple. So like on an empty battlefield, this is phenomenal. It attacks for 6 power and 2 of those they can't block, like cause it's death touch. This card looks great. I'm gonna give this a B minus. Actually, I'm just gonna give this a B. This looks great. Like this is good at any point in the game. And Sonic Shrieker for our last Mardu card. Here we have a 2 red, white, black, 4/4 dragon. So flying. When this creature enters, it deals 2 damage to any target and you gain 2 life. If a player is dealt damage this way, they discard a card. Okay, they're not messing around with these dragons. These dragons are awesome. So this is an uncommon. I don't think I've been saying the rarity. So most of these have all been uncommons. I think there have been a few commons in here, but this is great. 5 mana for a 4/4 flyer, and then ETBs, and you get to kill something. You get your 2 life, and then if you end up just going face, they discard a card, especially late in the game. Like they might only have 1 card left in their hand, and it just could be, their 6-drop that they're waiting to draw their next land for. This card looks excellent, solid B, could be even B plus territory. I mean, if you ever kill a creature with this, like come on, that's just gravy. But this card looks great. Okay, moving on to white red as the other ally enemy colored pair, we have the flurry mechanic. So that is when something happens when you cast your second spell in a turn. Right off the bat, I'm going to tell you, I'm skeptical about this. When I see this, I think, okay, there needs to be a lot of one drops, a lot of cantrips. Like we're thinking if there's opt in the set or something like that. Like that's right away what I'm looking for. Because in order to cast your second spell in a turn, you got to have really cheap stuff and lots of it. So lots of one drops, lots of two drops, in order to get some benefit here. That's my first thought. We'll see what the cards actually look like. Okay. Twin Maw Stormbrood, Splinter Twin here. So the white black Stormbrood, we have 5 and a white for an uncommon dragon, 5/4. When it enters the battlefield, you gain 5 life. Okay, so 6 mana for a 5/4 flyer, and then you gain 5 life. I'm interested. That card to me, that seems like. I mean, that fifth point of toughness of power is great. This looks like a solid C plus, maybe B minus. This card looks excellent. And then the other side, the omen side, again, the spell that you get that if you cast this, you shuffle the creature back into your deck. Charring Bite, 1 red sorcery. It deals 5 damage to target creature without flying. Okay, so it's a roast. Sign me up. Both halves of this card look awesome. The fact that you get the major flexibility, I really like that. Both the Stormbroods we've seen so far gives you early game and late game, but this one is just so strong. An incredible removal spell. A roast is great, phenomenal removal spell. Kills anything in the set, basically. Is going to kill almost everything, not your dragons, but everything else. And then, hey, if they only have dragons on their side of the battlefield, fine. Slam your own dragon, gain some life, and you have a 5/4 flyer to tussle with. So this card looks great. I'm going to say B plus for both halves of this card. Making this card, I guess, each side of the card is really strong. So the dragon I'll say is C plus, and the charring bite, the roast, I'm going to say is B minus. So you put that together on one card, I'm going to say the card overall is a B. Like you're just going to be excited to put this in your deck if you can cast both halves of it. The flexibility is just great, and both halves are good. Moving on to the white red. The white red cards. We have Frontline Rush, white red instant. Choose one. Create 2 1/1 goblin creature tokens. Okay, so your go white effect. Or target creature gets +X until end of turn, where X is the number of creatures you control. Okay, so a pump effect or an intruder alert. Or you get your +1/+1s at instant speed, your 2 1/1 tokens at instant speed. This card seems fine. This card doesn't blow me away. It's a harder to cast at 2 mana at 1 white and 1 red. You're not always going to have a mountain and a plains in your opening hand, right? So I'm going to say this card, unless the tokens end up being really impressive, I'm going to say this card is like, I don't know, a C minus. Not too impressed. Quarry Mountain Stalwart, 1 red white. For a human monk 3/3, it's 3 mana for a 3/3. Flurry, okay, so here's the keyword coming into effect right away. Whenever you cast your second spell, each turn this creature deals 2 damage to each opponent and you gain 2 life. Okay, so again, like I said, we're seeing a lot of life gain. We've seen this on a lot of cards so far. Okay, so 3 mana for a 3/3, and then whenever you cast your second spell, I mean, that's a good effect. Just drain for 2 is good. The question is, how often are you going to be able to cast Flurry? One thing to note is cards like this, they do count itself if it's your first spell, right? So if you cast this and then you're able to cast something else on top of it. But again, like that means you're casting this off of curve. You're casting your 3 mana 3/3 on turn 5, whatever. But on turn 4, you're playing 2/1 or 2/2 drops or whatever. So I think Flurry is going to absolutely require a really low mana curve. Like I don't want very many 4 drops in the deck. I want to be tapping out at 3 drops, and here you're getting a 3 mana 3/3. Like that's the top of the curve. So I don't know. By itself, if you can get this to trigger like 2 times, that's gonna be great. But like think of all the work. Compare this to Skirmish Rhino, right? Like that's a 4/3. That's a 3/4 trampler, and you automatically get this effect. Here you get a 3/3 And if you ever get to do Flurry, which I'm guessing is going to be pretty difficult, pretty rare to do, then you get the effect. I don't know. I mean, yeah, technically you can live the dream and do this every turn. It just costs 2 spells a turn, but I'm going to say this is a C minus. Like, you'll put it in your deck if it works, great. If not, you can put other things in your deck that are easier to cast. River Wheel Sweep, 2 blue. Yeah, moving on to Jeskai, right? So red, white, we already covered Mardu. So now the other tribe that red, white covers is going to be Jeskai. 2 and a blue, 2 or white, 2 or red. Sorcery, tap target creature, put 3 stun counters on it. And stun counters, we'll read this once. If a permanent with a stun counter would be become untapped, remove 1 from it instead. Those types of effects are not good. Typically, these types of delay effects usually they don't make the cut. Usually they're pretty bad D level. You're only putting them in certain decks and you're kind of desperate to do that. And usually that effect is 1 or 2 mana to do something like this, not 3 or 4 if you don't have your mana set up. So what does the other half of the card do? Exile the top 2 cards of your library. Choose one of them. Until the end of your next turn, you may play that card. Okay, so it's a cantrip with some card selection too. This is interesting because you get that red effect where you don't actually draw the card. You have to exile it, and you have the time window to play it until your next turn. Of course, you are tapping one of their creatures and stunning it down for a couple turns, so you're giving yourself the time to cast that next card. This card actually does seem pretty good. I mean, it's good. You know, you tap their blocker, you get an attack in, and the fact that it stays tapped for a couple of turns, and then you get your card back with a little bit of selection. Granted, you do have to be able to play it the next turn, so if you play this on turn 3 or turn 4 and you got 6 drops, you know, you're going to have to choose the other card if you see a 6 drop of the 2 cards. But overall, I think this card looks good. I think this card looks like a C+, as well say. Well, I'm not super strong on the stun effects. Okay, next card. Monastery Messenger, 2 or red, 2 or white, 2 or blue. Bird Scout, 2/3. Flying Vigilance. Okay, so nothing too crazy there. A difficult to cast 3-drop 2/3. Flying Vigilance. When this creature enters, put up to 1 target non-creature, non-land card from your graveyard on top of your library. That's what I'm going through the hoops of. Getting really good mana or casting this for 4. You don't even get to draw the card. Like, also a small flyer in a set full of dragons. Any Windrake or any 2/3 small flyers. Every deck is going to have at least 1 dragon in it. Like, we'll get to the mechanic. There's literally the Behold mechanic, which gives you a bonus by having dragons in your deck. And there's a cycle of removal spells that have that on there at common. So every deck is incentivized to have dragons. The dragons look good. This card looks like a stinker. I'm just going to say this is a D. Like, paying 4 mana for a 2/3 Flying Vigilance, and then you can put a card on top of your library if you want. Non-creature, non-land. No, that's a no for me. D. Jeskai Brushmaster. 1 generic, blue, red, white, orc, monk. Interesting to see an orc as a monk. There must be some lore behind this, that the orcs are uniting with the good guys. Whatever. Anyway, it's a 2/4, double strike, prowess. Okay. So basically a 4 mana 4/4. Again, there's kind of a lot of those in the set. A little more difficult to cast with the double strike, but then prowess. Prowess is always great. Great mechanic. So especially the fact that prowess pumps the toughness too, which makes it so difficult to block. Like, this thing in combat, what are you supposed to do? They attack with this? You're not going to block this with your 4/4. No way. You're just not doing that. You're not going to block it with your 4/5. Maybe with your 5/5, and even then you're like, oh, whatever instant they have, better not actually pump this creature. Yeah, because I mean, right away, like, you just imagine someone attacks you with this, and you have a 5/5. They give that +2/+2 ability. Boom, this thing has 5 power. No thanks. I'm not blocking that. So I'd say this card looks like a solid C+. Looks like a good card. If you can pump prowess enough. Again, I'm looking for opt. I'm looking for some type of instant speed cantrip. Is going to really make the difference on Jeskai and Flurry. Next card, Jeskai's Shrine Keeper. So the Jeskai Dragon, 2 generic, blue, red, white. Dragon, 3/3. Okay, so it's a small itty bitty. Flying haste, nice. When it ETBs combat damage, or no, not ETB. When this creature deals combat damage to a player, you gain 1 life and draw a card. Okay. I was a little skeptical with the 3/3 body on a dragon. Drawing a card to gain a life. That's nice. And haste. But again, how many times are people... I'm also going to guess there's a decent amount of reach in the set. I mean, it's not going to be all reach. Like, how lame is that? Just make a bunch of dragons and every card has reach. But 5 mana for a 3/3 flying, that's really undersized. It also just gets killed by a lot of things, having only 3 toughness and paying 5 mana. I mean, it does have haste, so when you get the window in there to get an attack in, you gain a life, draw a card. That's great. That's like pie in the sky. Awesome. But I just feel like a lot of things are going to be able to tussle with this or just block it and stonewall it, and then you're stuck with paying 5 mana for a 3/3 flying. It doesn't even get the haste if you don't have a clean attack. Also going with the flurry mechanic, like you don't want to have a lot of 5 drops, so Jeskai, not looking too impressive. I'm going to give this a C-. I'm not going to be, I don't think I'm going to be thrilled to put this in my deck. Like, it looks nice on paper, but how this plays out, I'm a little skeptical. All right, moving on to our next color enemy pair. We have another mechanic for, so we're going to cover blue red. We just covered the Jeskai cards, so blue red also is going to include Temur. The Temur effect is harmonize. So this is basically like flashback, but you're able to discount it by tapping 1 creature to reduce the spell costing cast. So it says you may cast this card from your graveyard for its harmonized cost. You may tap a creature you control to reduce that cost by X, where X is its power, then exile the spell. So flashback is a phenomenally powerful mechanic. This is one where technically you don't have to have a creature, but usually the harmonized cost is pretty expensive, considering you can tap your 4 power creature and reduce it by 4. So this looks like a pretty strong mechanic from the cards I've seen so far. I am pretty bullish on harmonize. So what do we have for red black? First we have the Storm Brood. So Rune Scale Storm Brood is 3 and a red, so cheaper one, uncommon dragon, 2/4, flying. When you cast a non-creature spell or a dragon spell, this creature gets +2/+0 until end of turn. Okay, so if you can kind of like prowess, the super prowess, but just for your offense, just for your power. So it can easily become a 4/4, or nice that it gets buffed by other dragons too. So that looks good to me. 4 mana for a 2/4 flying, and then you can pump it to a 4 power or even maybe a 6 power on your flurry turns if those ever happen. That looks good to me. That looks like a solid playable C+. The other side, the omen side, is Chilling Screech. 1 blue instant, counter target spell with mana value 2 or less. Okay, so conditional counter spell. Again, I like the fact that on turn 2, like if you're on the play, this is great. You can just counter their 2-drop and keep moving along, keep humming along. And if that doesn't happen, it's not like this card is just dead. Like I wouldn't put Chilling Screech in my deck, probably ever by itself. But it tacked on to the flexibility of this card as a split card, great. Happy to have this. Overall, I'd say this card, and sometimes you're going to be countering like the removal spells, right? So it can be a protection because there's a lot of cheap removal in this set. So that's something to consider. Like more often, you're probably going to be doing that with this card. is you draw it in the later game, and maybe the 2/4 isn't super relevant. And you just decide maybe I'll hold on to this for a turn or two and potentially protect something from cheaper removal. A little sketchy to do that because there's also expensive removal that it can't counter, all the 3 and 4 mana stuff. But certainly something to consider. Overall, I like the flexibility of this. I'm going to say this is C+. You can put this in a lot of decks, I think, especially if there's a lot of dragons and non-creature spells. I'm just skeptical about the non-creature spell thing. Okay. Glacial Dragon Hunt. Here we go. Okay, so let's start. Let's see. We got a sorcery right off the bat. It's a red and a blue. Red blue sorcery. So this is what I'm talking about. Cheap spells. This is what we need for flurry and that draw card. Okay. Then you may discard a card. When you discard a non-land card this way, it deals 3 damage to target creature. Okay, so 3 mana sorcery speed, excuse me, 2 mana sorcery speed that's hard to cast, blue and red, for 3 damage to a creature. Not great. The same casting cost to draw a card. Not great. Put those two together, and the flexibility to discard an online card, or have, discard something that's now irrelevant, turn that into your 3 damage spell. It definitely adds a lot more flexibility in card selection. So overall, that's pretty good. But here's the factor that this is what we're waiting for. Harmonize 4 blue red. So again, this is kind of like a lot of Harmonize have 4 in the generic, so it's a flashback to the old Temur mechanic of Ferocious, where it cared about 4 power things. So here you tap your 4 power creature, and you're getting this effect again. It is a sorcery. I don't know if all the Harmonized cards are sorceries, but I think a lot of them are, if not all of them. So you don't get the ability to just hang back with your creature on defense, then at the end of your opponent's turn, tap it to no cost. Like if they're not all sorceries, they're close to it. So you do have to remove your creature from combat that turn. Now, granted, creatures with summoning sickness can do this, so you're not necessarily losing out on an attack, but you'll be losing out on a potential block. But I like that a lot more than losing out on a good attack for Harmonize. I'd say this is a good card. Like, this looks good to me. To be able to do this twice, like just doing it for once, being able to do it twice, like that's pretty good. You're drawing 2 cards. You're having the flexibility to turn some irrelevant spells into killing a 3 toughness creature. This looks good. This looks like a C+ to me. Effortless Master 2 blue red, Orc Monk 4/3. Okay, Vigilance Menace. Okay, a couple of nice keywords there. So good on defense, good on offense. This creature enters with 2+1/+1 counters if you've cast 2 or more spells this turn. Okay, so on turn 4, it's just a 4/3 Vigilance Menace, which 3 toughness on defense, not great. Menace is obviously good, so having 4 toughness and Menace makes it kind of difficult to tussle with. But then on later, if this is your second spell, you're getting 2+1/+1 counters. So it's a 6/4, 6/5. That's pretty good. I mean, 4 mana for a 6/5, and you did something else. Like maybe you cast the previous glacial spell, so you drew a card, you killed something, and then you cast this. That's pretty good. That's a pretty good turn 6, right? Kill one of their cards and get a 6/5. So I don't know. I'm this card looks okay. I'm gonna say C until I'm proven otherwise. Temur Tawnyback 2 green, 2 blue, 2 or red. Beast 4/3. ETB loot. Draw a card, discard a card. I think this is gonna be pretty good. I mean, looting is always good. There's the harmonized mechanic, so you can even be getting value by discarding your harmonized card with this, and then it also has 4 power. Okay, thinking about this more, yeah, this card I think is going to be a good linchpin. Like by itself, it's good, difficult to cast, good for 3 mana, not great for 4 mana. At 4 mana, a 4/3, pretty underpowered. I mean, it does have that 4 power, and there's a lot of things with 4 toughness, so it will trade with a lot of things, and you get the value of looting. That card selection, I mean, looting is just so good. Discarding a land just feels so good. If you're drawing a spell and discarding a land in late game or mid game, it's awesome. But then again, with the fact that it has the ability to discount your harmonized card that you can also discard with it, I think this card is just going to do a lot. My guess is because of the synergy, it's going to punch above its weight. So I'm going to say C+, B-. Like maybe, yeah. This card I think is going to be sneakily good. That's my guess. Next card, Dragonclaw Strike 2 or green, 2 or blue, 2 or red. Sorcery, double target power's toughness. Double the power and toughness of target creature you control until end of turn. Okay, so make your big thing giant. And then it fights up to 1 target creature an opponent controls. Okay, so the problem with fights instead of bites is that you can't attack that turn. Like you always do it. You're like, oh, my 6/6 kills their 4/4. Okay, wait, now I can't attack because their little 2-drop will trade with it. So the fact that you get to make your thing giant in doing this, it's kind of like a bite. And then with the benefits of having double power. for the turn. So yeah, the fact that it doubles the toughness, so you're not worried about attacking. So again, in this scenario, yeah, your 6/6 becomes a 12/12. So even though it has 4 damage marked on it, who cares? Because it fought a 4/4. Like, that doesn't matter. It's also nice that it can fight things that are the same size or even bigger than it. That's nice. The attack might become sketchy when you're doing that. Like, you have a 4/4, they have a 6/6. So now we're swapping the scenario. Now you have an 8/8 that fights their 6/6. All right, that's pretty good. So your small thing can tag their big thing. It is sorcery speed. It is difficult to cast, so this is probably going to be happening later in the game. Am I thrilled about this for 4 mana at sorcery speed? Seems like I'm setting myself up to get just blown out with their removal spell. Like, if they can bounce my creature or anything like that, or interact in any way, like, goodness. Spending 4 mana to just have no effect and get 2 for 1. I don't know. Like, high ceiling, cool card, cool way to keep the fight mechanic alive, because most of these cards, like, we just usually get bites now because bites just functionally work so much better. So kind of a cool way to think about incorporating bites. I'm a little skeptical on this. I'm not too hot on it. I'm going to say C minus. I'd just rather have any other type of removal spell, I think. Yeah. I mean, maybe there's a ton of trample in the set. And, like, if everyone else has to tap out on their turns, you doubling the, like, making your 5/5 a 10/10 trampling that took out their blocker. I mean, that can be really good. Like, I definitely see the ceiling of this card being a B card, like being just like, oh, this was such a good card, it won me the game. But it's risky, so a little more skeptical, realistically, on average, of how this card plays out. I'll say C minus with a high ceiling. Mammoth Bellow, 2 generic green, blue, red. Sorcery, create a 5/5 elephant creature token. Okay, so a 5/5, 5 mana 5/5. That's fine. Harmonize, 5 green, blue, red. That's right. Now we're cooking. I want to cast a lot of these through this format. I just want to say, all right, turn 5, I'm casting a 5/5. And turn 6, you better believe it, I'm going to be casting another 5/5 and doing something else as well, because I'm only having to pay 3 mana to harmonize this, because I can discount it by 5 with the creature that's created. This is awesome. I think this is going to be a really powerful card, especially with there's a lot of board stalls. Like, the thing is, you don't even lose. You do lose out if you do it on this turn, or if you do it the way I just talked about. You play this on turn 5, and on turn 6, you want to do it again. You do lose out on that attack, but you don't lose out on a blocker, which is notable, right? Because it just creates a big creature. Like, a lot of the harmonize, it's doing other effects. This is just creating a creature. So the card just synergizes with itself so well. And if there's just simply no attack with your 5/5, you're like, oh, they have a Death Toucher or something. Like, I don't really want to attack my 5/5 anyway. Great, until I can deal with that Death Touch later in the game. Awesome. Just cast. You get a 3 mana 5/5, and you get 2 5/5s for a total of 8 mana over 2 turns, and you don't even lose that blocker. Love it. I'm high on this card. Solid B. Karakik Guardian, 3 green, blue, red dragon, 6/5. Nice. 6 mana, big boy. Flying Vigilance Trample. This creature has hexproof if it hasn't dealt damage yet. Sign me up, daddy. Sign me up. This is awesome. Great on offense. You just get free attacks with Vigilance. It has trample and fly evasion and trample with the 6 power. And then they can't even kill it until you already get to do something with it this turn. Like, you get an attack, or you get a block, I guess, off of it before they can even have the chance to kill it. Awesome. I'm high on this card. B. Very, very high on this card. This looks great. This is what I want to spend 6 mana on, for sure. All right, moving on to Sultai. The key mechanic they have is Renew, which is where you get to exile a creature from your graveyard to give some effect. So in this example, you pay 3 and blue to exile this card from your graveyard, put 2+1/+1 counters on target creature, activate as a sorcery. We have the Stormbrood, of course. So Whirlwing Stormbrood, 4 blue, dragon, 4/3, flash, flying. You may cast sorcery and dragon spells as though they had flash. Okay, that's nice. 4/3 flash flying is good. I don't know for 5 mana how often you're going to be ambushing something. with only the 3 toughness there. But I do think this has. I'm not blown away by that. That doesn't blow me away. Let's see what the other half does. Dynamic Soar, 2 green sorcery, put 3+1/+1 counters on target creature you control. Okay, so sorcery speed, pump something. You're down a card though. This is an adventure. I'm pretty. I wouldn't put that in my deck. The front half I wouldn't be thrilled about either. I'm not thrilled about either half of these. Like, yeah, cool, being able to cast your sorceries and dragons at instant if you have a deck full of dragons, but you have to have this card in it. And this is a bad dragon. I want a good dragon instead, rather than a bad dragon that synergizes with my good dragons. So I'm gonna say this is like a C minus. I'm not gonna be happy about putting this card in my deck, and I never want to cast Dynamic Roar unless it's winning me the game on the spot. Let's see what the blue-green cards have. Auroral Procession. Green, blue, instant. Return target card from your graveyard to your hand. Okay, notice that's any card. It's not just a permanent. I like this card because there's going to be naturally some self-mill, and you're going to be milling things that you don't want to mill. Like sometimes you're going to mill your bomb. So having ways to get that back, I always like having that. But that's like paying 2 mana for that is not that good. It's nice you can do it at instant speed when you have the mana, whatever. But the reason I like this card even more is because you can return cards with Harmonize, which is great. So you can, it's not just like creatures, you can return your sorceries that have Harmonize. So you can, yeah, normally these types of effects, you can only bring back a creature from your hand or to your hand. So then you're getting a card like think that Temur Elephant card. You play that. Then you get it back and you play it again. Then you harmonize it. Like you got 3 5/5s over the course of that. I mean, yeah, it was 2 different cards, but that seems good. But really what makes me like this card is that there are a number of cards that care about cards leaving your graveyard. So that is where this gets more interesting. Such as Kishla Skimmer. Green, blue, 2/2 flying. Again, not too thrilled about small flyers in a set full of dragons. Whenever a card leaves your graveyard during your turn, draw a card. This ability triggers only once each turn. Now we're cooking, right? Now we're cooking. Just a little 2 mana 2/2 flyer, and like it is early in the game, so before they can start slamming their dragons, you might get in for 1 or 2 attacks with this, which is good. You know, a little chip damage here and there is great. But then it just starts drawing you cards like on a regular basis, especially with the renew mechanic, right? I'm seeing the combo there. You have all these cards in your graveyard that exile from your graveyard, or you harmonize them, and that's another thing you can do with this body. Ooh, the way this works with harmonize. Okay, tap this to discount something by 2, and you don't like this card. It's going to serve its purpose in the early game, but then that's it. It's a little bit of like. I mean, a 2/2 flyer is just not going to do a ton in the mid or late game. But then this card by itself is just going to tap for your harmonized cards to reduce the cost. And you don't care about tapping this anyway because it's not doing anything in combat. And then it's just drawing you a card in addition to doing whatever the harmonized card is. I'm all in. This looks awesome. I wouldn't even want to target this thing with my renew abilities because I don't want to make this thing like. They already have enough of a reason to kill this. You don't need to. This thing's already going to be a lightning rod. You don't need to put more resources into this. They're going to kill it as soon as they can anyway. So I think this card looks great. Oh, I don't think I rated the last card. So this card, I'm going to say, like, I do think this card's going to be good. I think it's going to be beneficial. You're only going to want one of. I think it's going to be pretty easy to get. Like, I don't see myself putting 2 or 3 of these cards in my deck. Like, I think it's just 1. So I'm going to say it's a C+. And then this card looks like a solid B. This looks great. I'm very happy to put this in any green-blue deck. Lie in Wait. Black, green, blue, sorcery. Return target creature card from your graveyard to your hand. Okay, so another way, like I said, to save, like you milled over your bomb, you get it back. And then obviously you can draw a card if you have that bird on the battlefield. Then Lie in Wait deals damage equal to that card's power to target creature. Oh yeah. This is what I'm talking about. 3 mana later in the game, right? Like unless there's a lot of, if you happen to mill something early, But this is going to be a mid-late game card where you just get back your bomb. You don't even have to mill it. Like they just, let's say you had your bomb, you played it, it did its thing, you traded with something, maybe had a good ETB effect, and then they kill it, and then you just get it back and just snipe their best creature. Like, okay, sign me up. This looks awesome. It's just a 2-for-1 removal, affects the board, and that's the thing. It's like this affects the board, right? So it's not even just like, oh, it's not just a 2-for-1. You're not just like getting a card back from your graveyard, or Macabre Waltz getting two creatures back from your graveyard, and not having to discard. I think Macabre Waltz makes you discard, but you know what I mean, right? It's not even just like some card advantage. It's also affecting the board, which is where card advantage, that's its biggest weakness, right? Is if card advantage can't affect the board, you're falling too far behind, dirtling. Yeah, you're gaining resources, you're gaining cards. Meanwhile, you're just falling too far behind in tempo. Here, you're just getting a 2-for-1, getting your best bomb, blowing up their best card. This looks awesome. I'm gonna say B+. Like, it's gonna be really difficult to draft to pick 3 color cards really early, unless it turns out like one, you're just forcing whatever. This is the best. Sultai is by far the best. You're gonna pick this every time. Pack one, pick one, whatever. But if I pick a good green or black card, my first card, I would easily pick this pick 2. I wouldn't have a problem doing that and just saying, all right, I got a good green card or a good black card. I got Lion Weight. I'm just going for it. I'm going to make it work. I'm going to force it. This card looks phenomenal. B+. Gurmag Nightwatch, 2 black, 2 or green, 2 or blue, Human Ranger 3/3. So 3 or 4 mana 3/3. What does it do? ETBs. Look at the top 3 cards of your library. You may put one of those cards back on your library. Put the rest in your graveyard. Okay, so here's your self mill, and with a little bit of card selection potentially. So you don't have to put that one of them back. You can just mill all 3 if you don't like them. I like that. At 4 mana, I'm not excited to do this. Like, I'm not excited to do this on turn 4. But one thing that's really nice about these types of cards, especially, I'm imagining like Sultai and Temur decks being, they're green. They're going to be going later. You're going to probably want to get to the late game with these decks. So you're going to have a lot of tap lands. So it is nice that you can get your mana set up and play this on turn 4 while also playing a tap land, right? Like, I look at this as, again, we're going to assume on these hybrid cards, a lot of times you're going to be casting them for 4 mana. But when you're not, and hopefully in Sultai you're doing so, you have better mana than your average deck. So hopefully you do have your mana by turn 3 technically, right? But you did something else. You played a different 3-drop, and then on turn 3 you play a tap land. Or excuse me, on turn 4 you play a tap land, but you can still play this card. So how good is self-milling 3? I think that's going to be really important. I think if you ever mill over a harmonized card, you're just feeling like you just got a ton of card advantage. And then also milling over the renew cards. That's what it's called, right? Renew, I think. Yeah, renew. Also good, not as good as the harmonized, because harmonized is just straight up half a card or a full card, whereas harmonized is usually like, put some counters on something or buff a creature. But I think this card's good. I think it's gonna be really important to self mill, and unless self mill is like really common and easy to find, then this card is gonna be less like if there's an easily green card, if there's a couple green commons and a black common that mill, I'm gonna probably be favoring those. That self mill, I'm gonna favor those over this. That being said, self mill is gonna be really important, so I'm gonna say this card is C+. Rakshasha's Bargain, 2 or black, 2 or green, 2 or red, instant. Look at the top 4 cards of your library. Put 2 of them into your hand and the rest into your graveyard. Oh, man. Okay. So more self-mill. This is pretty good. I'm a big fan of this. So let's just say it costs you 4 mana like we've been talking about. 4 mana, instant speed. Look at your top 4. It's like a mini dig through time, right? And look at 4 instead of 7. It costs 4 mana instead of 8 mana. And then you put the others into your graveyard. Whew. Oh yeah, sign me up. This looks awesome. This is a card advantage. This is what I want to be doing. I want to be Temur, 4-color, splashing black or splashing red, whatever, Sultai spot. Like I want to be 4-color, 4-color just dirtle. And I want to be drawing extra cards, filling my graveyard with value. This card looks great. I'm going to say this is a B-. This card looks really, really good. Karoo Goldkeeper. 1 black, green, blue, dragon, 3/3. Okay, so 4 mana for a 3/3, flying, under cost. What else does it do? Whenever one or more cards leaves your graveyard, there's that thing again where if you're leaving your graveyard, and notice it's not like it has to be exiled from your graveyard. You can return it to your hand. You can, whatever, it doesn't matter. Return it to the battlefield anytime a card leaves your graveyard. Whenever one or more cards leave your graveyard during your turn, create a treasure token. Okay, not as good as drawing a card, which was on a 2 mana card versus this being on a 4 mana card. What else does it do? Renew for 2 black, green, blue. Exile this card from your graveyard. Put 2+1/+1 counters and a flying counter on target creature. Activate as a sorcery. Okay, so 5 mana to pump something. 2+1/+1 counters, make it flying, make it a flyer. That's a lot. I mean, the renew is great that you're going to have things to do. It's a nice mana sink, kind of like exhaust or whatever. It's good mana sink. That's a lot of mana to just give something +2/+2 and flying permanently, but still. This card I'm thinking might be a little bit weaker because the front half is pretty bad. Like I think 4 mana for a 3/3 flyer, and then it just gets stonewalled by all the 4 toughness flyers. So you can't even, but then all you get is a treasure when you do the thing, when something actually leaves your graveyard. I'm going to say this card is a C. I don't think this card is quite as you're going to, like, it could perform well and you could be fine with it in your deck. But overall, I think there could be better things to be doing. All right, that's going to do it for me tonight. I got to wake up early tomorrow and go to the zoo with the family tomorrow. But that's it for all the gold, uncommons, and commons. Tomorrow night after the zoo, I'll be doing the rest of the commons and uncommons for all of the remainder of the single color cards. So tune in next time. Thank you so much. Hope you enjoyed this. I sure did. This was a lot of fun for me. This is new type of content that I might keep doing. I'm definitely going to do this set, and I really enjoyed it. So if you liked it, let me know what you think. If things I could do better. If there was issues with audio or something, always let me know, that type of stuff. But hopefully you enjoyed this. Hopefully you're really excited for the set. I want to know what tribe you're thinking looks the best. To me, I'm most hyped on, like I said, I just want to be doing 4-color Dirtle. But so far, definitely what stood out to me was the Temur and the Sultai cards. Let me know what clan you think is going to be best and what one stands out to you after we looked at all the gold cards. And we'll see you soon with the rest of the commons and uncommons. Bye.